In the summer of 1940, the United States Army decided that one of the most famous men alive was a security risk.
He was too unreliable, they said, to be allowed anywhere near the atomic bomb. So they shut him out. And that is strange, because the American bomb program only began at all because of a letter he had signed. He never worked on it. He never saw a blueprint. And near the end of his life, he called that signature the one great mistake he ever made. This is the story of Albert Einstein. Albert Einstein
Einstein was born on the 14th of March, 1879, in the German town of Ulm.
His parents, Hermann and Pauline, were secular Jews, and the year after he was born, the family moved to Munich, where his father and his uncle Jakob opened an electrical company. They wired up the new world. Dynamos, direct current, electric light. And for a while, business was good. But the boy worried then. Albert was so slow to start talking that his parents thought there was something wrong with him. Then when he was 5 and sick in bed, his father handed him a compass. Albert watched the needle swing and settle, always pointing the same way, pulled by something he couldn't see and couldn't touch.
He never got over it.
Something deeply hidden, he wrote later, had to be behind things. He was not the struggling student people imagine. At 12, he was teaching himself algebra and geometry out of textbooks. A family friend named Max Talmud gave him a geometry book, and Albert tore through the whole thing so fast that Talmud said the boy's mind soon flew higher than he could follow. Before his 13th birthday, he had worked out his own proof of the Pythagorean theorem. By 14, he had taught himself calculus. What he couldn't stand was school. The Luitpold Gymnasium in Munich ran on rote learning and obedience, and he said later that teaching like this is harmful to creativity. Then in 1894, the family business collapsed. Hermann and Jakob bid for the contract to light the city of Munich and lost it because they couldn't afford to upgrade from direct current to the new alternating current. The failure cost them the factory. The family packed up for Italy. Albert, 15, was left behind in Munich to finish school. He lasted a few months. At the end of the year, he got a letter from a doctor, walked out of the gymnasium for good, and turned up on his family's doorstep in Pavia. A year later, he gave up his German citizenship altogether so that he'd never have to serve in its army. In 1895, at 16, he sat the entrance exam for the Federal Polytechnic in Zurich. He failed it.
And that is where the most repeated story about Albert Einstein comes from.
Einstein failed. Except look at what he actually failed. He didn't reach the required standard on the general part of the paper, the languages, the history, the natural history. In physics and mathematics, he performed so well that the examiners singled him out for it. So the principal sent him to finish school in Aarau, in Switzerland, and when he graduated in 1896, they gave him a certificate that still exists. Physics 6, Algebra 6,
Geometry 6, Descriptive Geometry 6.
On the Swiss scale, 6 is the top mark there is. The one subject he was genuinely bad at was French. He got a 3. Einstein never failed mathematics, and he said so himself years later, when a newspaper printed that he had. Before I was 15, he replied, I had mastered differential and integral calculus. He enrolled in Zurich at 17 in a course with a handful of other students. One of them was a 20-year-old Serbian woman named Milva Maric, the only woman among them. They studied together, argued physics together, and fell in love, because nobody wanted him. Einstein graduated in 1900, fully qualified to teach mathematics and physics, and then spent nearly 2 years failing to get a single teaching post. He applied everywhere. Nothing came back. He became a Swiss citizen in 1901, and the Swiss army promptly rejected him as medically unfit. In the end, a friend's father rescued him. Marcel Grossmann's father knew somebody, and in 1902 Einstein was hired at the Swiss Patent Office in Bern as an assistant examiner, level 3. The bottom row. He spent his days assessing other people's inventions. A gravel sorter, an electric typewriter. His employers made the job permanent in 1903, but noted that he shouldn't be promoted until he had, in their words, fully mastered machine technology.
In the evenings, he met 2 friends, Conrad Habit and Maurice Sullivan, to read philosophy and argue about physics.
They called themselves the Olympia Academy as a joke about how unimportant they were. He married Milva in January 1903, and there was already a secret. Letters found in 1987 revealed that a year before the wedding, Milva had given birth to a daughter, Liesel, while staying with her parents in Novi Sad. When Milva came back to Switzerland, the baby wasn't with her.
Einstein's letters mention scarlet fever, and they mention adoption.
Nobody knows which.
One of the most documented lies in modern history, and his first child simply disappears from the record.
1905. Einstein was 26 years old. A clerk. Not a professor, no laboratory, no research team, no funding. In that 1 year, in his spare time, he published 4 papers.
The first said that light doesn't flow, it arrives in packets, in tiny discrete quanta, and it helped crack quantum physics open.
The second used the jitter of tiny particles suspended in water to prove that atoms are real, at a time when serious scientists still doubted they were.
The third threw out absolute time and absolute space, the ground Newton had built on, and became special relativity.
And the fourth was barely 3 pages long. It pointed out that if the third paper was right, then mass and energy are the same thing, wearing different clothes. That's where E equals mc squared comes from. 3 pages. He finished his doctoral thesis that April as well, 24 pages, dedicated to Marcel Grossman, the friend who had got him the job. Physicists call 1905 the miracle year, and they rank it alongside 1666, the year Isaac Newton had his own run of genius. And when it was over, Albert Einstein was still an assistant examiner, level 3. He stayed at that desk for another 4 years, but special relativity had a hole in it. It said nothing about gravity. Einstein spent the next decade filling that hole, and the mathematics nearly beat him. In 1907 he got the idea it all hangs on. If you're falling freely, you cannot tell whether gravity exists at all. Fall, and gravity vanishes.
From that single thought he built the whole structure, and it took him 8 more years, and mathematics so brutal he had to bring Marcel Grossman back in to help him with it. By the autumn of 1915 it was done. General relativity says gravity isn't a force tugging at you across empty space. It's the shape of space and time themselves bent by anything that has mass. And then the theory did the thing a real theory has to do. It stuck its neck out. Mercury's orbit had a wobble in it that Newton's physics had never explained. Einstein's equations explained it exactly. Then he made a second prediction, and this one was a gamble, because it could be checked and it could humiliate him. Starlight passing close to the sun should bend. Not slightly. By about twice what Newton's physics allowed. On the 29th of May 1919, there was a total eclipse of the sun.
The British astronomer Arthur Eddington sent out 2 expeditions to catch it.
One went to the island of Prince Albert off the coast of West Africa. The other went to Sobral, in Brazil. The plan was simple and audacious. When the moon blocks out the sun, you can photograph the stars sitting right beside it, and measure whether their light got bent on the way past. Newton's physics predicted a deflection of about 0.83 seconds of arc. Einstein predicted 1.75. Roughly double. On the 6th of November, 1919, the results were read out to a joint meeting of the Royal Society and the Royal Astronomical Society in London. Einstein was right. The next morning, the Times of London ran a banner headline across the page. Revolution in science. New theory of the universe.
Newtonian ideas overthrown.
Newton had stood unchallenged for more than 200 years. A German physicist from the country Britain had been at war with a year earlier had just overturned him, and it was British astronomers who proved it. Einstein went to bed a physicist and woke up the most famous scientist on Earth. Arguably the first celebrity scientist there had ever been, so they gave him the Nobel Prize. And here is the part almost nobody knows. They didn't give it to him for relativity. In 1921, the Nobel Committee looked at that year's nominations for physics and decided that nobody had earned it.
So they reserved the prize.
A year later, they handed the reserved 1921 prize to Einstein and read out the citation. For his services to theoretical physics, and especially for his discovery of the law of the photoelectric effect. That's the light in packets paper. Not relativity. Not E equals mc squared.
Relativity was still too strange, and parts of the committee didn't trust it.
Einstein wasn't even in the room to collect it. He was 6 months into a tour of Asia, and a German diplomat picked it up on his behalf. He'd given his first public lecture in Tokyo, and and met the Emperor of Japan at the Imperial Palace, with thousands of people packing the streets outside just to get a look at him. That was what he'd become. Not a physicist. A spectacle. And the prize money didn't stay with him either. 3 years before, when he and Malva divorced, he had promised her that if he ever won a Nobel, the money was hers. He won it 2 years after signing that promise. He paid. The divorce had come through on the 14th of February 1919.
He and Malva had been living apart for 5 years by then, ever since she found out about Elsa.
Elsa Lowenthal was his cousin, on both sides of the family at once, and he married her the same year the divorce was granted. His son stayed in Zurich with their mother.
The younger one, Eduard, was brilliant and wanted to be a psychiatrist.
In his early 20s, he had a breakdown and was diagnosed with schizophrenia. He spent the rest of his life either in his mother's care or confined in the Burgelsli, the psychiatric hospital in Zurich.
Einstein had worked out the shape of space and time.
He could do nothing at all for his own son. In February 1933, Einstein was in America on a visiting professorship when Adolf Hitler took power in Germany.
He knew at once that he couldn't go home.
He was right. That February and March, the Gestapo raided his family's apartment in Berlin again and again. They raided his cottage and seized his sailboat. In May, his books went onto the Nazi bonfires, while Goebbels announced that Jewish intellectualism was dead. A German magazine printed a list of enemies of the regime, and beside Einstein's name it said, "Not yet hanged." There was a $5,000 bounty on his head. On the 28th of March 1933, his ship docked at Antwerp. Einstein walked straight into the German consulate and handed back his passport. It was the second time in his life he'd given up being German.
The first time was to avoid a war. This time it was to survive one. For a few weeks that summer he hid in England in a wooden cabin on a heath in Norfolk, guarded by 2 men with shotguns, and a photograph of them standing over him ran in a London newspaper. The most famous scientist in the world was a refugee in a hut. Then he took a post at the Institute for Advanced Study in a quiet New Jersey town called Princeton. He stayed there for the next 22 years. In the summer of 1939, 2 Hungarian physicists knocked on his door.
Leo Szilard and Eugene Wigner had worked something out, and it frightened them. The uranium chain reaction was possible,
which meant the bomb was possible. A Nazi, Germany had just stopped the sale of uranium out of the mines it had seized in Czechoslovakia.
Einstein, a lifelong pacifist, said he had never even considered the idea.
Then he understood it and he acted.
Szilard wrote the letter.
Einstein signed it on the 2nd of August 1939, and his name is the only reason anyone read it.
A letter from a Hungarian refugee goes into a drawer.
A letter from Albert Einstein goes to the President of the United States.
It took 2 months to reach Franklin Roosevelt's desk on the 11th of October. 10 days after that, Roosevelt set up the Advisory Committee on Uranium and gave it $6,000 to buy uranium and graphite. That $6,000 grew into the Manhattan Project. In July 1940, the American military considered giving Einstein the security clearance he'd need to work on the bomb. They refused him. The reasoning was that he was a pacifist and that he was too famous. Too much of a risk. So the most recognizable physicist in the world sat in Princeton doing part-time consulting work for the Navy on explosives, while the project he had helped set in motion was built without him. He wasn't told what was in it. In 1954, the year before he died, he said the thing out loud to his old friend Linus Pauling. "I made one great mistake in my life," he said, "when I signed the letter to President Roosevelt recommending that atom bombs be made."
And then he added to defense he never quite seemed to believe himself.
But there was some justification, the danger that the Germans would make them. 7 years earlier, he put it far more bluntly to Newsweek.
"Had I known that the Germans would not succeed in developing an atomic bomb," he said, "I would have done nothing."
There's a part of Einstein's life the newspapers of the day mostly ignored. He had arrived in America in 1933 as a refugee from state racism. Then he looked at the country that took him in and watched it do a version of the same thing to its own citizens.
He joined the NAACP in Princeton, and he spent the most famous name in science on saying so out loud.
In 1937, the singer Marian Anderson came to Princeton to perform, and the Nassau Inn refused her a room. Einstein invited her to stay in his house.
She stayed with him every time she returned for the rest of his life.
Her last visit was 2 months before he died.
In 1946, he went to Lincoln University in Pennsylvania, the first university in America to grant degrees to black students, the university that taught Langston Hughes and Thurgood Marshall.
He accepted an honorary degree, and then he taught a class on relativity to the students.
And he gave a speech on segregation as blunt as anything he ever said. There is a separation of colored people from white people in the United States, he said.
That separation is not a disease of colored people.
It is a disease of white people, and I do not intend to be quiet about it.
The mainstream press, which followed Einstein absolutely everywhere, barely covered it.
The black press ran it in full. 5 years later, when W. E. B. Du Bois was indicted at the age of 83, Einstein offered to appear as a character witness.
The judge dropped the case,
and the FBI kept a file on Albert Einstein that ran to 1,427 pages.
On the 9th of November 1952, Chaim Weizmann, the first president of Israel, died. Israel needed a new head of state, and the government decided there was only one name worth asking for. On the 17th of November, the ambassador Albert Einstein sent Einstein a letter offering him the presidency of Israel.
It was a largely ceremonial job, the way a constitutional monarch is, with the real power sitting with the prime minister. Einstein would have had to move to Israel and take Israeli citizenship, and in exchange he'd have been left completely free to carry on with his physics.
Prime Minister David Ben-Gurion was so nervous about the whole thing that he asked an aide what on earth they'd do if Einstein actually said yes. He'd had to offer it, Ben-Gurion said, because it was impossible not to.
But if he accepts, we are in trouble. He needn't have worried. Einstein said no the next day.
I am deeply moved by the offer from our state of Israel, he wrote, and at once saddened and ashamed that I cannot accept it.
All my life I have dealt with objective matters, and so I lack both the natural aptitude and the experience to deal properly with people.
He was 73 years old, and he had just turned down an entire country. So let's clear up 3 things people say about Albert Einstein. He did not fail mathematics.
He scored 6th, the top mark in algebra, in geometry, and in physics.
The subject he failed was French. He did not build the atomic bomb.
He signed a letter that started the program, and then the army refused him clearance and built it without him.
And his brain was not some oversized supercomputer. We know exactly what it weighed because somebody weighed it. 1,230 grams. That is an ordinary human brain. Which raises a fairly obvious question. If we know what Einstein's brain weighed, who weighed it?
On the 17th of April 1955, an aneurysm in Einstein's abdominal aorta started to bleed.
A surgeon named Rudolf Nissen had reinforced the same weak spot 7 years earlier in 1948. It had held. Now it was giving way.
The doctors told him they could operate.
Einstein said no.
I want to go when I want, he told them.
It is tasteless to prolong life artificially.
I have done my share. It is time to go. I will do it elegantly. He brought work with him to the hospital. It was the draft of a speech for a television broadcast marking Israel's 7th birthday. He never finished it. He died in the early hours of the 18th of April
in Princeton Hospital at 76 years old.
There was a nurse in the room. She heard him say a few words. But Einstein said them in German, and the nurse didn't speak German, so whatever the last thought of that mind was, it left with him. He'd asked to be cremated, and he was in Trenton, New Jersey.
His ashes were scattered at a location that has never been disclosed.
But he didn't leave completely.
That morning, the pathologist on duty at Princeton Hospital was a man named Thomas Harvey. During the autopsy, Harvey removed Albert Einstein's brain.
He didn't have permission from Einstein's, and he didn't have permission from Einstein's family.
He weighed it. 1,230 grams. Then he took it home. Harvey kept the brain, cut into hundreds of pieces, for over 40 years. He took the eyes too and gave them to Einstein's eye doctor. The man who wanted no grave and no monument and no place for anyone to come and stare at him spent the next 4 decades in jars. Einstein left his papers and his archive to the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. It runs to more than 30,000 documents, and the physics he did on his lunch breaks is now load-bearing. Satellite navigation is the plainest example. The clocks on GPS satellites run fast, by about 38 millionths of a second every day, because of the two effects Einstein predicted, and if nobody corrected for that, your position would drift by roughly 11 kilometers a day.
Every phone on Earth quietly runs on his homework.
In 1999, Time magazine named him the person of the century. There's an element on the periodic table named after him, Einsteinium number 99.
And there is one last piece of irony in that, because Einsteinium wasn't found in a laboratory.
It was found in the fallout of the first hydrogen bomb test picked out of the debris in 1952. They named element 99 after the man who called the bomb letter his one great mistake. He never knew.
Einstein died before they announced it.
He was told he was too slow to talk, too difficult to teach, too foreign to trust, and too unreliable to be let near the thing his own signature started. He was a patent clerk level 3 who rewrote the universe in his spare time.
So tell me, which part of that surprised you the most?
Let me know down below, and I'll see you in the next one.